As the government shutdown enters week number 2 now, President Trump says any firings of government employees will be because of Democrats, according to the president. This comes, however, as a CBS News poll finds Americans are frustrated with this shutdown and worry about its impact on the economy.
CBS 42 Washington Bureau, as the government shutdown enters a second week, the White House is threatening mass firings.
The government shutdown enters its second week.
I call them Democrat layoffs. They're Democrat layoffs. They're causing it.
President Trump says firings of federal workers will start soon if the government doesn't reopen.
We need them to turn the lights back on so that everyone can do their work.
Trump's biggest fear just became crystal clear. And honestly, it's not what most people think. It's not the courts. It's not the lawsuits. It's not even the whole National Guard mess that's been blowing up everywhere. No, his biggest fear is losing the House in 2026. Because the second Democrats take control, they're coming with impeachment. Again, and before you roll your eyes and say, oh, here we go, another impeachment story. Yeah, I get it. We've been here before, twice actually. But this time it's different. This isn't some random threat. This isn't Democrats just complaining on Twitter. This is organized. This is strategic. And they're building the case right now as we speak. House Speaker Mike Johnson, yeah, that guy, he came out on October 1st and basically said the quiet part out loud. He warned that Democrats are poised to impeach Trump again if they win back the House.
There's no one forcing him to do that. He will do that because he wants to do that, because he and Russell Vogt want to cause even more pain for the American people.
Democrats are pushing back on the president's comments.
I want Chuck Schumer to do the right thing that he's done throughout his 30-plus year career in Congress and vote to keep the government open.
Congressional leaders from both sides of the aisle continue to blame each other for the shutdown.
And listen, when the Republican speaker is sounding the alarm bells, you know something real is happening behind the scenes. When your own party leader is warning about what's coming, that tells you everything you need to know about how serious this threat actually is. But here's where it gets wild. They're not waiting until 2026 to start. They're building the groundwork now. Democratic state attorneys, lawmakers in blue states, legal teams, they're all coordinating, collecting evidence, drafting articles, preparing investigations. It's like watching someone build a house, except the house is made of impeachment documents and constitutional violations. And what's giving them all this ammunition? Well, Trump himself, honestly. His recent National Guard deployments have been, let's just say, controversial. Doesn't even cover it. Illinois sued him. Chicago sued him. And Democrats are pointing to these lawsuits and go and see unprecedented abuse of executive power. Those exact words, by the way. They're using that language in their draft impeachment resolutions. Can you believe this? The man survived 2 impeachments already. 2. And here we are, talking about a third. Some people are calling this obsession. Some are calling it accountability. But whatever you call it, it's happening. And it's not just talk anymore. This is real preparation with real resources behind it. Several Democratic House members have already drafted articles of impeachment. Representatives like Sri Thanadar and Jan Schakowsky, they're not waiting around. They're gathering co-sponsors. They're amassing documentation. They're preparing the legal framework so that the second they have the votes, boom, it's go time. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but they don't have the House right now, so who cares? And yeah, that's true. Republicans control the House. Mike Johnson isn't letting any impeachment resolution see the light of day. But that's exactly why Trump is scared, because 2026 is right around the corner, midterm elections. And historically, the party in power loses seats in the midterms. It's like clockwork. So if Democrats flip even a handful of seats, if they take back the House, Trump's entire second term changes overnight. No more friendly House, no more protective Republican majority, just investigations, subpoenas, and impeachment proceedings. That's his nightmare scenario, and it's looking more and more possible every single day. And here's the thing that makes this so different from the last 2 times. They have more ammunition now, way more. The lawsuits are piling up, the constitutional clashes are mounting. Every week there's some new controversy, some new legal battle, some new accusation of overreach. Party strategists and legal experts are already saying that Democrats will have a much stronger case this time around. Stronger than Ukraine? Stronger than January 6th? Yeah, apparently so. Because this time, it's not just one incident, it's a pattern. It's months and months of actions that Democrats are framing as systematic abuse of power. And whether you agree with that or not, the documentation is there, the court cases are there, the paper trail is there. So Trump isn't just worried about losing political power. He's worried about facing the most aggressive impeachment push yet during his final 2 years in office. Imagine that. You make it to your second term. You think you survived everything they can throw at you, and then boom, they come back harder than ever. This is wild, right? Like, we're watching this play out in real time. Democrats aren't being subtle about it either. They're openly talking about impeachment as part of their 2026 strategy. It's not a secret plan. It's a campaign promise at this point. Okay, so let's dig into what's actually happening here, because this isn't just about Trump being paranoid. This is strategic warfare, political chess, and Democrats are setting up the board piece by piece. First, let's talk about what triggered this whole thing: the National Guard deployments. Now, Trump has deployed the National Guard before, right? That's not new, but the way he's been using them recently, that's what's causing the freakout. Illinois and Chicago both filed lawsuits claiming he overstepped his authority. They're saying he deployed military forces without proper justification, without following the right procedures, without respecting state sovereignty. And here's where it gets interesting. Democrats aren't just treating these lawsuits as random legal battles. They're treating them as evidence. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C in the impeachment case they're building. Every lawsuit, every court filing, every legal challenge, they're cataloging it, documenting it, preparing to use it. CNN reported on October 6th that these National Guard controversies are being directly referenced in draft impeachment resolutions. Not hypothetical future resolutions, actual drafts that exist right now. Democrats are writing this stuff up as we speak. So why the National Guard issue specifically? Well, because it touches on something fundamental: presidential power versus state power, executive authority versus constitutional limits. It's the kind of high-stakes constitutional showdown that makes for compelling impeachment material. Way more compelling than some phone call or some mean tweet. Democrats are framing this as Trump treating the military like his personal security force, deploying them without proper oversight, using federal troops to enforce his political agenda in blue states. And whether that's a fair characterization or not, it's the narrative they're building. And narratives matter in impeachment proceedings. But it's not just about the National Guard. That's just the latest thing.
The Republicans shut down because they've refused to talk with us.
At the center of the fight, whether to extend healthcare tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, something Democrats are fighting for.
Democrats are simple. We want to extend it, and so they won't have to pay that increase. And Johnson does not want to do it. He's just not serious about it.
There's a whole list, and I mean a long list, of what Democrats are calling constitutional violations. Legal experts and party strategists have been quoted saying that the growing list of constitutional clashes and pending court cases will give pro-impeachment Democrats a much stronger foundation this time. Think about that for a second. They're not relying on one smoking gun. They're building a portfolio, a comprehensive case that spans months of actions, dozens of incidents, multiple legal challenges. It's like they're putting together a greatest hits album, except instead of songs, it's controversies. And who's leading this effort? Well, it's not just the usual suspects screaming on cable news. It's organized congressional action. Representative Sri Thanadar has been actively drafting articles. Jan Schakowsky has signaled support. Other Democratic House members are quietly gathering co-sponsors, building coalitions, preparing the infrastructure. According to records from Congress.gov from May, there were already impeachment resolutions being introduced. Yeah, May. This has been brewing for months. While everyone was focused on other Trump drama, Democrats were laying groundwork. Now, here's what most people don't understand about this whole thing. Impeachment isn't really about removing the president. I mean, technically that's the goal, right? But realistically, we all know the Senate isn't going to convict. Didn't happen the first 2 times, probably won't happen a 3rd time. So what's the actual point? It's about the investigation. It's about the subpoena power. It's about forcing testimony, demanding documents, putting people under oath. When you launch an impeachment inquiry, you get incredible investigative authority. You can dig into everything, every decision, every meeting, every communication. And that's what Democrats really want: the ability to investigate without limits. They want unlimited access to information, unlimited power to question witnesses, unlimited authority to demand answers. Plus, and let's be honest here, it's about politics. It's about the 2026 midterms and beyond. Democrats are positioning impeachment as both an accountability measure and a rallying cry for their base. Vote for us and we'll hold Trump accountable. That's the message. That's the campaign strategy. The Atlantic ran a piece back in September with a title that said, "Fear of losing the midterms is driving Trump's decisions." And yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Trump knows what's coming. He knows that if Democrats win the House, his entire presidency becomes a defensive operation. No more agenda setting, no more legislative wins, just survival mode. And this is why Mike Johnson's warning matters so much. Because Johnson isn't some random Democrat trying to score points. He's the Republican speaker. He's Trump's ally in the House. And even he's saying, yeah, this is real. This is happening. We need to be ready. When your own party is acknowledging the threat, you know it's serious. When the people who are supposed to be protecting you are raising red flags, that's when you know the danger is legitimate and imminent. So what happens next? Well, everything depends on November 2026. If Republicans hold the House, this whole impeachment threat stays theoretical. Draft resolutions sit in filing cabinets. Evidence gathering continues but goes nowhere. Trump finishes his term relatively shielded from congressional accountability. But if Democrats win, if they flip those 20-plus seats they need, then January 2027 becomes impeachment season.
We're ready to go back. You know, we have a record-setting economy. We have a record-setting country. Prices are way down. We're doing better than the country's ever done. And the Democrats hate seeing that. It's up to them. Anybody laid off, that's because of the Democrats.
As the government shutdown enters its second week, President Trump remains adamant that Democrats are responsible for the shutdown and for the potential layoffs of government employees. The White House says firings will happen if the government is not reopened soon. A new CBS News poll finds many Americans are frustrated with the shutdown, disapproving of the White House, Republicans in Congress, and Democrats in Congress nearly equally.
New Democratic Speaker, new committee chairs, new subpoena power, and all those draft resolutions, all that evidence, all those months of preparation, it all gets activated. Trump would be facing impeachment proceedings during the final 2 years of his presidency. His legacy would be defined by being the first president impeached 3 times. His ability to govern would be severely compromised. His approval ratings, which already aren't great, would probably tank even further. And here's the kicker. Democrats don't even need to successfully remove him to win. Just the process itself is damaging. The investigations, the hearings, the constant negative coverage, it dominates the news cycle. It freezes the legislative agenda. It turns everything into a referendum on Trump's conduct. Some Republicans are arguing this is all just political theater, that Democrats are obsessed with Trump, that they're abusing the impeachment process, that they're turning a constitutional tool into a partisan weapon. And look, there's probably some truth to that. Impeachment has definitely become more political over the years, but Democrats would argue they're just responding to unprecedented behavior, that Trump has pushed constitutional boundaries further than any modern president, that accountability requires action, not just complaints, that if they don't impeach after everything they've documented, they're essentially endorsing abuse of power. Who's right? Honestly, depends who you ask. But what's not debatable is that this is happening. The preparations are real. The strategy is real. The threat is real. And Trump absolutely knows it. He's watching this unfold just like we are. Except for him, it's not just political drama. It's his entire legacy on the line. It's his ability to govern. It's his place in history. And that's why this story matters so much more than people realize. All right, so let's break this down into the key points you actually need to understand. Because there's a lot of noise around this story, a lot of hot takes and political spin. But here's what actually matters. Point 1, Democrats are actively preparing impeachment infrastructure right now, today in 2025. This isn't speculation. This isn't conspiracy theory. Members of Congress have drafted articles. State attorneys are building legal cases. Evidence is being compiled. The framework is being constructed so that the moment they have the votes, they can move immediately.
The poll also finds that those surveyed are worried about the impact the shutdown could have on the economy, with 49% saying they're very concerned and 31% saying they are somewhat concerned. On Sunday's Face the Nation, congressional leaders from both sides of the aisle blame the opposing party for the shutdown, with Democratic leaders saying they're fighting for Americans' health care and Republicans saying the Democrats are being unreasonable.
Why does this matter? Because it means impeachment isn't some distant possibility that might happen if a bunch of things go wrong. It's a planned strategy with real resources behind it. They're treating this like a serious political operation, not just angry tweets. This is organized, funded, coordinated effort with multiple moving parts, all working toward the same goal. And that level of preparation tells you everything about how serious Democrats are about making this happen. Point 2, the National Guard controversies are the centerpiece of this new impeachment case. Illinois suing Trump, Chicago suing Trump, Democrats calling it unprecedented abuse of executive power. These aren't just random lawsuits. They're being positioned as constitutional violations worthy of impeachment. And honestly, whether you think Trump was right or wrong to deploy the National Guard the way he did, you have to admit it's stronger impeachment material than a phone call to Ukraine. It involves the military, state sovereignty, questions of authoritarian overreach. It's heavy constitutional stuff that resonates with voters who worry about presidential power. Point 3. The 2026 midterms are the trigger point for everything. Right now, Republicans control the House. Mike Johnson blocks any impeachment effort. But if Democrats win back control, and historically the president's party loses seats in midterms, then January 2027 becomes ground zero for impeachment proceedings. Trump knows this. His team knows this. That's why you're seeing defensive messaging already. That's why Johnson is warning about it. That's why Trump's decisions are being driven by fear of what happens if he loses that House firewall. Every move he makes is being calculated through the lens of how does this affect my chances in the midterms. Point 4. This impeachment push is as much about politics as accountability. Yeah, Democrats are genuinely concerned about constitutional violations and executive overreach, but they're also very aware that impeachment fires up their base, that it gives them subpoena power, that it dominates the news cycle and puts Republicans on defense. It's a 2-for-1 strategy: hold Trump accountable and energize voters heading into future elections. Use impeachment as both a legal tool and a political weapon. And whether you think that's appropriate or not, it's effective. The first 2 impeachments certainly shaped Trump's presidency, even though neither resulted in removal. So where does this leave us? Here's the bottom line. Trump is facing the very real possibility of being impeached for a 3rd time. Not because he did one specific thing wrong, but because Democrats are building a cumulative case based on months of actions, dozens of legal battles, and a pattern they're characterizing as systematic abuse of power. If they win the House in 2026, impeachment proceedings will likely begin in early 2027. We'll see hearings, investigations, testimony, document requests, the whole circus. It'll consume media coverage. It'll define Trump's final 2 years, and it'll set up the most dramatic political showdown since the last 2 impeachments. Will it result in removal? Almost certainly not. The Senate math doesn't work for Democrats. They need 2/3 to convict, which means convincing a bunch of Republicans to vote against their own party's president. That's not happening. But removal isn't really the point. The point is accountability, investigation, political leverage, and message sending. The point is making Trump's life difficult, constraining his power, and rallying Democratic voters around a common cause. And Trump's biggest fear isn't the impeachment itself. It's what impeachment represents: a complete loss of control, an opposition party with unchecked investigative authority, 2 years of defensive operations instead of setting agenda, a legacy permanently defined by being impeached 3 times. That's why he's so focused on the midterms. That's why every decision is being filtered through how does this affect 2026. That's why his allies are already sounding alarm bells about Democratic intentions. This is the story behind the story. Not just Democrats might impeach Trump again, but Democrats are systematically preparing to impeach Trump again. They're building the case right now, and everything hinges on who controls the House after 2026. So yeah, Trump's biggest fear, not the courts, not the lawsuits, not even the National Guard mess. His biggest fear is losing the House and facing a 3rd impeachment with more evidence, more coordination, and more determination than the first 2 combined. Pretty wild when you think about it. The most impeached president in American history, possibly about to become even more impeached. And we're all just watching it unfold in real time. More on this as it develops. Trust me, this story is just getting started.